Hey guys, it's M4J here and welcome back to the Jeffries network here on OpenTTD. Now you saw there we have started, do you know what, I've already forgotten the name of the station. That's not a good start, is it? Let me get that information up again. But we're building the rest of the line that we started in the last episode from Tarnway and Funstone, which sounds like a kid's party, but there you go. We're building the connections to Munfingford Paragon. I think I put Parkway in the episode list. It should be Paragon. And also to, and again, names. I think it's Trunway Estelle or Lenway. Lenway Rialta. Not even close. Lenway Rialta. And then that's this main line complete, actually. It's a bit rare for me to be able to build a main line in 2 episodes from start to finish and actually have it complete. But we've built it to the 2 terminus stations, both of which connect up with the high-speed network, both of which will be offering services to and from Guard City at a slightly more leisurely pace. But we'll be connecting up with some pretty major cities along the way. One of which you can see me bulldozing half of right here. This is part of a bridge project that I'm building across the tracks that we've got there. This main line does cross the Great Central Route a couple of times. I don't think there'll be full track connections at each crossing point, but there definitely will be one over by the main station, just to try and get some more connections going on there. But overall, I'm really happy with this line. I'm also really happy with the services that I've put in. So at the moment, I've got 2 lots of Class 460s, I think, the old Gatwick Express units. One of which is an sort of a super express, if you can say that, on a 3rd rail network. It has, I think it's 5 stops between Guard City and its terminus. And then there's another service which is a slightly more regular stopper, but it is still classed as an express on the service schedule. Originally I had the old Gatwick Express intercity livery trains, but their power output is awful and their tractive effort is woeful. Basically every time it got to a hill that was 2 tiles tall, if you can say that about a hill, I suppose you can really, any sort of 2 slope tile incline, the train will just stop. It'll go down to like 15 miles an hour and just stall. I don't want my express trains doing that, and I'm not really sure why that's the case. Something not quite right with the stats of the train. So they're all Class 460s for now. I might even look at other types of train that we can have for the express trains. Top speed is 90 miles per hour. The top speed of some of the other units that we could use on the line is also 90 miles an hour. So any stopping train could also run on the fast tracks without holding up the fast trains, which I think is pretty good. It means a greater flexibility. I've also got some City Connect. I mean, they're all City Connects, the franchise. I might reclass the express trains under a different franchise. We'll see about that. But the City Connects services using the Connects liveried trains, currently we've only got 2 services operating with that livery, and they are both utilising the little loop system that we built in the last episode. So from GSMA down to Cadenbury Junction and back via the other loop. Heavily inspired by the Sutton Loop, in case anyone's interested, which Thameslink and Southeastern, I think it is, it might be Southern. They use the Sutton Loop via Wimbledon and Sutton, funny enough, and other stations along that particular line. It's a line I don't know very well myself. I've never ridden it past Wimbledon, and even then I've only ridden it to Wimbledon from the north direction. So I've never gone round the loop, as it were. I've only gone along the main line, and I believe even then I've only done the trip twice. So so there you go. Once was going to Brentford, I believe. I think that's on the loop still, and one was going to Wimbledon, both to watch football. So my only experience really of South London railways, apart from when I was very, very young, are football related. So I've been to Wimbledon, Brentford and Charlton, all on the train. And I've only done the journeys once each time, and I couldn't for the life of me remember how to do it. Although I have been to Brentford twice. As is totally irrelevant, by the way. It's totally irrelevant. So I say I've been to Brentford twice, but one of them I drove there, so it really has no relevance whatsoever. Overall, as I say, I'm very happy with this line. It's a really nice line. It's got good character to it. Despite the fact that it's brand new, it's meant to have been built like 100, 200 years ago. 200 years ago? That doesn't sound right at all. 150 years ago is probably a better calculation. I'm trying to think when the first railways appeared. I'm sure it wasn't in 1818. I think it was like the 1820s or 30s when the old like wagon ways got converted into what we now call railways. And actually, talking about railways, I didn't really have any conversation topics for this episode, but I've just thought of one, and it's to do with an article I was reading in my magazine. And it's also to do with what is classified as a railway because of this article. So the article I was reading it's sort of comparing train times between like the new Crossrail trains compared to the old Crossrail trains, some old loco hauled services in and around England and Scotland. But the one that really intrigued me was high-speed rail in China. I mean, that intrigues me on a whole range of different things. First and foremost, with that, I really like the setup that China have got with their high-speed rail. I'm not so keen on the way that they've built their trains. They basically did this this thing where they got Siemens and Hitachi and Alstom, I think it was, to build high-speed trains specifically for the Chinese market. And then they either bought the technology off of those companies or they reverse engineered it and built their own versions of those trains. So you've got the original Siemens Velaro trains, which run, I think they're the CRH3s, I believe, are the Velaros. I'm probably saying that wrong as well. It's probably pronounced Valero, but there you go. They now have a train called the 380, which is essentially the same train, but I keep going to say outsourcing, but it's not. It's kind of the opposite of outsourcing. It's insourcing. They're building them in-house, which is okay. Like, I don't think it's illegal or anything like that. That would be really stupid if that's what they were doing. I just think it's a bit strange that that's the route they've gone. However, they've done a very good job of it, so who am I to judge? But the bit that found the most intrigue for me was they had a speed log for the Shanghai Transrapid maglev, which literally just does a shuttle service between a very far corner of the Shanghai metro network and one of their airports. I think it's Pudong Airport. I've probably butchered that pronunciation as well. I do apologise to the people of Shanghai. And that's the question. Technically, maglev runs on wheels. When it's stationary or when it's operating at low speeds, there are wheels, and it's a bit like a guided, a guideway, essentially. A bit like some of the Paris metro trains. They run on tyres, and the Montreal metro, I think, as well runs on tyres. Personally, I don't think that's a railway. That's my personal opinion. I think if it runs on tyres, it's a roadway, or it's a guided busway, or it's a guideway. For me, even if they have the guide rails, unless the wheel is in contact with that rail at all times, which it isn't in most cases, it's not a railway. And I feel the same about maglev. I like maglev. I think it's a really cool way to get around, and it's a shame that there aren't more examples of it in the world. But I don't think maglev should be classed in the same category as high-speed rail, for example. I think they're two different things. For me, that's like comparing a bus to a plane, for example, and saying, oh, well, a plane's just a faster bus. Well, it's not, is it? It's a completely different form of transport. I think a maglev is a completely different form of transport to a train. That being said, I'm going to take a quick segue for a second and just talk to you about what's going on screen here. Drenninghead, ages ago, I said about rebuilding the east and west stations. And to be honest, I've been looking for an excuse to do it for ages as well. And then this idea came along to connect the new third rail network to the line just to the west of Drenninghead, and therefore reposition the stations. Now, this has caused a huge headache in terms of re-timetabling the trains. I've had to send them all to depot and do it like that because they kept getting held up. And what really annoys me is when it keeps auto-changing the wait times at stations to like 30,000. Why does it do that? I have no idea. It's really annoying. It means I have to reset everything each time I make a change like that. But yeah, I've had to change that. So we got the 2 new stations in place. It does mean that Drenninghead East is why can't I speak today? The Drenninghead East is now very close to the next station to the east, which could mean I end up moving that station as well. I might take the opportunity to do it now, whilst I'm resetting all the schedules, so I don't have to do it again. That'd be very nice. But yeah, Drenninghead has been rebuilt, which should shorten journey times between Guard City and Denston now, because you don't have to do that stupid U shape around the bottom of Drenninghead anymore. Of course, at the time when I built the line, Drenninghead wasn't that big, so doing the U shape was needed, whereas now, just go straight across. The old lines are still in place at the moment. I have double checked that there are no trains stuck on there. At the moment, I don't really know what to do with the lines. I might just get rid of them, or I might convert them into another railway and use them for something different. I don't know yet. But yeah, to go back to Maglev, I think Maglev should have its own category. I think, you know, car and bus are 2 different forms of transport, really. They both run on roads, but they're different forms of transport. Same with like aircraft and helicopter. They both fly, but they're 2 different forms of transport. For me, a maglev is not a train, and a train is not a maglev. Even though they run on wheels, they're not guided wheels as in like conventional rail. But I would like to see more maglev being built, because at the moment there are only 2 systems that I'm aware of. There's the test track in Japan, which may or may not become an actual line. Who knows? I want it to, but I'm not sure if it's actually built to that standard. There's the old Transrapid Test Center in Germany, which I think has now been decommissioned, and then there's the one in Shanghai, which the reason it hasn't become a thing is because of cost. It costs way too much to actually run the line, to the point where I think at one stage there was a power issue. They couldn't physically power the line. There's also the small inconvenience of, despite the fact that the maglev top speed I think is 280 miles an hour, which is fast, trains can only pass each other at a maximum of 218. That's 218, not 280 miles per hour. I guess the tracks are slightly too close together for a 560 mile an hour cross speed, which is a bit of a lack of forethought, I would say. That's a bit of an oopsie that's the case, which means that they have to stagger departures so that trains aren't passing each other at top speed. One's always slowing down and one's always speeding up as they pass, which is not great, really. It makes running a regular service that little bit more difficult. But I do think maglev is a good idea when done properly. I also think high-speed rail is a good idea when done properly. And at the moment, China are proving that high-speed rail is indeed the future. They're building so many high-speed lines at the moment, it's unbelievable. And doing a very good job of it too. And then in the last episode, of course, I was talking about the new high-speed line that's opened in South Korea as well. I was saying about how it's single track, and that's unusual. It is unusual, but it doesn't mean it's bad. I think it's very good. And I really like the look of the trains as well. They really do remind me of the old school TGVs, which I believe they are in fact based on. And they're really nice looking trains. My biggest fear at the moment with High Speed 2 in the UK is I've seen some of the concept designs for the trains, and whether it's the shape of the train or the livery, they don't look that good, to be honest. It's a bit worrying. What we really need to do in this country is decide now and decide quickly with High Speed 2. Are we going to make it so that you can run double-deck trains on it? I think we should. We can at least design and build it to operate in that way, even if we don't have double-deck units operating it from the get-go, even if that is like a later addition. I do think we need the ability to operate larger trains in the future, because you never know, it could end up being a necessity. I also think that we need to follow the example set by the French and the Germans when it comes to high-speed rail, because they're the leaders in Europe, definitely. Spain, Spain are doing a pretty good job. Italy is a bit more difficult because it's a bit more mountainous. But definitely the LGV network in France and the ICE network in Germany, they're the examples that we need to be following. And I hate saying that because I really think when it comes to things like rail, you know, it was invented in this country. We should still be the trendsetters, but that's just not the case anymore. We are so far behind the rest of Europe. Even though a lot of the designers who are actually designing and building these lines and trains and stations are British or British-based companies. We actually have a huge train building industry in the UK now, but they're not British companies. You've got companies like Hitachi. We used to have Alstom. They've now closed down. CAF, they're building a factory in Wales at the moment. We're trying to get back into it. We're clawing our way back into it, kicking and screaming at the moment. I really think High Speed 2 will be a good statement of we are here to make a good go of it still. Fingers crossed it all works out. There's a lot that's going wrong in the rail industry at the moment. You know, I was talking last week about Carillion, the company that have gone into, I don't know whether going into administration is the right term for that sort of thing, but they're in financial trouble. I think they have just collapsed, you know, ceased to exist kind of thing. They were actually doing a lot of electrification projects. You know, Network Rail and the Department for Transport have already cancelled a lot of electrification schemes around the country. The collapse of Carillion could cause more to go. Now we have got the new bi-mode trains coming in, the 800s and the 802s. I think we've got the 803s now as well, which are like a more powerful version, although that might be the 802s thinking about it. I always forget whether it's, I think it's the 800s, the bi-modes for conventional, so the East Coast main line is 800s, and certain areas of the Great Western main line. Then you've got the 801s, which are all electric, which are just for the East Coast main line. And then you've got the 802s, which are the more powerful bi-mode versions of the 800s, which are for the really hilly sections on the Great Western main line, particularly down in Devon and Cornwall. I think that's how it goes. And then we've got the 803s. I think they're the 803s or the 801-3. I don't know exactly, but they're being built for Transpennine Express. I think Northern might be getting some as well, and Hull Trains, I think, are the other operator that is getting them. I need to double check that. I believe that's the case. But bi-mode seems to be the government's sort of get out clause at the moment of, oh, we're not going to electrify the line, just get bi-mode trains. And the 319s, the class 319s that used to operate Thameslink, the ones that have gone up to Northern, some of them are being converted to, I think it's either 379 or 739. At the moment they're called 319 Flex, and they're bi-mode trains essentially. So they'll have diesel generators underneath the carriages that then generate electricity that goes through the existing power collecting devices. Like, I'm not saying it goes up to the pantograph or down to the third rail shoe or anything like that, but it's a generator that powers the traction motors of the train. So it's an electric train that uses diesel generators to generate the power instead of drawing power from overhead lines or a third rail. And they're being rolled out across the Northern network in areas where there are no electrification plans. There's also, and this is really what I wanted to talk about today, I might mention it a little bit more next episode. There's a company that's been going for a few years now called Viva Rail. And when I first heard about them, I thought nothing of it really. It just sounded like not so much an entrepreneur, but an eccentric with a plan, basically. All the old D stock, which is the old trains that ran on the district line until the new S stock, I forgot the name then, I nearly called it C stock, but that's totally incorrect. The new S stock, which is all the trains now on the subsurface lines, which we actually have operating in Guard City on this network. All the old D stock trains, which were originally just going to be cut up for scrap, a lot of them were bought by Viva Rail. And what Viva Rail have done, which I think is really clever, is they've converted them for mainline operation. So there are 2 trains at the moment that exist, and a third one that's being built, or I think the term they're using is upcycled, because they're taking the old trains and they're upgrading them for mainline operation in the UK, which I think is really, really cool. So currently there is a diesel version, which is the, I think they're the 230, so its number is 230001. That's the prototype. It caught fire not long ago, which made Viva Rail look bad, but actually it's a really clever idea what they're doing. The whole design of the train is modular, so everything underneath the train is modular. Also, the seating arrangements in the train is modular, so you can have it set up for metro with like underground style seating, or you can have it set for urban or interurban or suburban, wherever you might want. They've also got options where you can have toilets fitted, a buffet car, a shop I think was one of the things that was mentioned as well. But it's the power that's really clever. So currently it's only diesel powered, but they have got a battery version, which is just a single car at the moment, but it will be expanded in the future. Because it's got a modular power design, instead of a traction motor under the carriage, you can have a diesel engine. So you can have it as a diesel powered train, or you can have it as a generator that connects to a traction motor. So you can have it as an electric powered train, or, and this is the bit that's really clever, you can have battery powered, or they're even looking at hydrogen fuel cell power. And that's the bit that I really like, because that is the future right there, hydrogen powered trains. There aren't many, there are some in Germany I believe that are in circulation now, but there aren't many around the world. So keep an eye out for that name, Viva Rail. I think they're going to do great things. Anyway, I have talked for way too long. I actually set the time lapse for this episode for 20 minutes, and anyone who's watching this now will know that this is not 20 minutes, it's gone over. So I'm going to have to extend the time lapse to fit the episode length. I will end very quickly by saying apologies for no episode on Friday. Uni schedule is really hectic. This week's pretty hectic as well, but I'm going to try and record the episode for this Friday before things get really, really hectic. So there should be an episode Friday. Keep an eye out on my Twitter. If you don't already follow me on Twitter, it's @Majeffries. You should know the spelling if you watch this series. I always tweet if there's not going to be a video, and I try to give you a reason why as well, because I hate it when I watch people and they just don't bother uploading a video that day. So yeah, keep an eye out on my Twitter. I might try and use the YouTube community thing once I get my head around it as well. But yes, we have finished this main line. Next episode we will be putting trains out on this network. I don't know whether I'll be recording it as a time-lapse or live action just yet, but you'll know by the time you watch the next episode. But that is it for this episode. So thank you very much guys for watching. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you enjoyed the series, drop some comments down below with ideas for future episodes. Also head over to the name suggestions list. Need a name for this new main line guys, so go for it. Besides that, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support, and until next time, I will see you soon.